Welcome to our Week 2 Devil's Digest game preview. ASU taking the road for the first time this season, going to Stillwater, Oklahoma to take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They're ranked 11th in the country. Big time matchup for ASU. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Nick Borgia. Alongside me is our publisher, Hode Urbino. And Hode, after the Sun Devils' dominating win over NAU last week, what kind of conclusions can you draw that might apply to this week's game?
I was thinking about it, Nick, and it's one of those games where we used terms like glorified scrimmage, no-win games, a contest you really can't learn a whole lot from. But let's face it, if Arizona State actually lost that contest, suddenly you would have all these sweeping conclusions. But now that ASU won in such dominating fashion, 40-3, some people might be minimizing it. And I don't know if I said this in any of our videos previously, Nick, but I know I definitely said it on my website, DevilsDigest.com, that I look back to 2015, and that was one of the highest preseason rankings an Arizona State team ever had. And a lot of people look at that loss they had against Texas A&M week 1 at Houston. Was supposed to be a neutral site, really was 70-80% A&M fans, and ASU absolutely got dominated in that game. And a lot of people thought that the warning lights really went off then, but I remember back then, 7 years ago, that when I saw the performances that ASU had the following weeks against the quote-unquote cupcake games, which back then were Cal Poly, New Mexico at home, when they struggled in those two games, to me, that's when the warning light really went off. So when I look back at the NAU game, this is a game that you dominate a team is supposed to dominate. And with all the low expectations that really have followed ASU throughout the entire preseason, this team did not look like the doormat of the Pac-12 like many pundits out there think ASU can or should be this year. So I'm not saying you should make any sweeping conclusions on the other side of the coin, so to speak, for Arizona State, but I do feel that when you go ahead and really take care of business, when you're able to play as well as you have on both sides of the ball, and more importantly, and I know we talked about this a lot, not really showing much of the playbook, I think that ASU does have some confidence going in this game. And look, I mean, I'll admit that maybe teams like Oregon State, who beat Boise State, or a team like Arizona, who beat San Diego State on the road, maybe should have more confidence than ASU just because of the caliber of opponent. But again, doesn't take anything away from a team like ASU, which again has been absolutely battered. I feel in the media when it comes to preseason expectations and playing the way they feel, it may be alleviating some fears as much as you can do that against an FCS opponent. I think that the ASU definitely did well. There's sort of things to fix, and we'll see how they're able to really draw the right conclusions and really implement what they're trying to achieve this Saturday at Stillwater.
All right, so let's look at Oklahoma State. They had a victory of their own last week, 58-44 over Central Michigan on Thursday. That's a pretty high-scoring game, and when your defense allows 44 points against a team like Central Michigan, maybe some questions to be answered there. Is that a defense that you think the Sun Devils may be able to exploit? What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's definitely the chance to that because, look, let's face it. I'm sure that there are some people, and maybe called sugarcoating, maybe you could just call me realistic, saying, look, Oklahoma State was up 51-15, I think, early in the second half. They totally let off the gas pedal, maybe a little too much, and that's why the Central Michigan squad was able to score, I believe it was 29 points in the second half, 22 points in the fourth quarter along. But I also think this is just as a realistic school of thought, Nick, that would say, look, you're a top 15 team in the country. Let's say that it was your entire second and third teamers playing there on defense in the second half, which I'm not even sure is 100% true, but let's just go with that assumption. Shouldn't your second and third teamers play at a level high enough to stop a team like Central Michigan, who, granted, is one of the better G5 teams out there, but definitely not a team that I think that should come into Stillwater, come into any top 15 venue and score 44 points over the course of the contest. So overall, I think that as much as ASU defense, I think, was able to keep that playbook really tight-lipped as much as they can, you kind of wonder if Oklahoma State was able to do that, because I just can't believe that you just kept doing the vanilla defense and not really showing anything, and still just allowing 44 points to be scored on your home turf. So I think the ASU offense may be looking more at what Oklahoma State did on defense last year compared to this year, but to me, the most important matchup over here is actually going to be Arizona State's passing game versus the Oklahoma State secondary, because I feel that if there's any weakness on this Cowboy defense, it is really more in their secondary rather than the front seven. I mean, especially the front four for Oklahoma State is very stout, and I doubt that ASU could really run the ball more than 150 yards against a team like that. So now the question is, can the passing game really step up? And I know that you and I and many others talked about the very pedestrian passing game numbers that Arizona State displayed against NAU, but again, not to belabor the point over here, it just comes down to the point of how much of the playbook do you want to show. And the exotic passing plays, especially the tight ends, those are going to be reserved for Saturday. We'll see how effective ASU can be. So I think that there's probably going to be some opportunities that this Oklahoma State defense isn't going to present ASU, but it's incumbent on the Sun Devils to really make sure that their passing game is going to be performing at a high level, definitely at a higher level than it did last week against NAU, for Arizona State really to have any chance at an upset over here.
And let's turn to the Oklahoma State offense. As I mentioned, they still scored 58 points, so pretty impressive on their end. Their offense, rooted by Spencer Sanders, the dual-threat quarterback, had 4 touchdowns last week, over 400 passing yards, and may I mention, he also had 2 rushing touchdowns. So a lot of the offense flows through him, but with that being said, if he had 6 of their touchdowns, not a whole lot going on in the running game last week for Oklahoma State. Do you expect that to change for this weekend?
I really do, Nick, because Mike Gundy is definitely one of those old school coaches who definitely harps on having a strong running game. And I know in the Big 12 they're actually kind of known, maybe not so much in recent years, but even years past, guys like Cliff Kingsbury and Mike Leach just absolutely loving to air out the ball in the Big 12 left and right. And this Oklahoma State team definitely had, I would say, somewhat of an unorthodox offense against Central Michigan, which is ironic because, again, if you as an offense really don't want to tip your hand that much, you actually expect to do what ASU did, rush the ball for 267 yards and pass it for just over 150. And with Oklahoma State, it really was a reverse script, if you will. So I don't think they did that to throw off Arizona State, but maybe they just wanted to establish more confidence in Sanders, because Sanders is a quarterback that has been known to really turn over the ball via interceptions, via fumbles, and maybe just establishing his confidence in week 1, even though with Central Michigan, even though the level of competition was going to increase quite a bit the next week, that they really wanted to just have him just pepper the ball all over the yard, and obviously it's something that really worked. So I think just like you talk about Arizona State, maybe not so much looking at last week's defense, but really looking at last year and what the Cowboys did on that side of the ball. I think on offense too, the staff at Arizona State is not going to be quote unquote fooled by what Oklahoma State did last week, and I don't think they're expecting them to just pass at will. I mean, they're definitely going to try to stop them doing that, but they're definitely expecting a more balanced game, and I definitely feel that the Oklahoma State running game is definitely going to come more to the forefront. How successful they're going to be, that's going to be another question. I think the fact that for Arizona State, Tamarcus Davis, the senior cornerback, coming back into the lineup, I think is really huge, because if Oklahoma State is going to try to really air the ball early and often, which again I think might be a surprise if they do take that approach this week, it will be good to have Tamarcus Davis over there. But there's no doubt in my mind that this is definitely going to be one of the toughest offensive tests for the Sun Devil defense. And again, I would really expect a more balanced offense by Oklahoma State. But maybe it's a blessing that Oklahoma State showed ASU last week that they can really be a very highly effective passing game team, because I think that definitely caught the attention of the Arizona State staff. But again, nonetheless, to me, this defense is really going to have to play lights out. I think they have the capabilities of doing it, but they're going to have to really play an exceptional game to slow down what I think is a very explosive Oklahoma State offense.
Alrighty, so it's prediction time, and as we know, this game arguably going to be one of the hardest games that ASU plays all season long. And the line right now is currently low double digits. Sun Devils underdog, obviously, hovering around 11 points depending on where you look. But Hode, let's talk about it. What do you think is going to happen? How the Sun Devils going to fare?
Well, I mean, to me, there's really 2 main aspects that I look at. First of all, it's just really the history of Arizona State on the road. And look, I know you can talk about this being literally a brand new team, over 40 new faces coming in, but I'm sure that somewhere in the subconscious of some returning players, just the struggles on the road, just really having one mental mistake after another that really prevents them from pulling an upset or just playing well away from the friendly confines of Tempe. I think that's something that still might be part of this team. And sure, I understand they will want to shake it, but the question is, what happens if adversity really hits them early in the game? Is it something they're able to shake off really effectively to make sure they can have a good performance from here on out? And also, just go back to the ASU passing game. I'm not dooming this aspect of the Sun Devils by any means, but it's still a passing game that really has a lot to prove. I think fans should realistically feel comfortable about what ASU is able to do on the ground, and I think they're able to find some success, not the same level of success they had last week, but some success against Oklahoma State. But it's really going to hinge on the passing game and how effective, how dominant it can be against an Oklahoma State secondary, which again showed a lot of cracks last week, and just in terms of a talent perspective, is nothing in terms of the caliber as the players they have up front. So until that element of the ASU offense is really proven as an element that can be effective not only this week but also for weeks to come, I'm going to be a little cautious in my approach over here. I think Arizona State can keep matters close, but I do feel that Oklahoma State is going to come on top 34-24.
All right, 34-24, that's the prediction. Thank you for your insight, Hode. And surprise, surprise, we're making the trip out to Stillwater. The entire Devil's Digest staff will be there. So you know what that means. Keep it locked in at DevilsDigest.com, at Devil's Digest on Twitter. We'll be there with all the comprehensive coverage. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Nick Borgia, that's Hode Urbino, Devil's Digest, and we'll see you in Stillwater.